Hello and welcome back to Level 0 Literacy Between the Seasons. Today's minisode is on That Dragon Cancer, a small indie project from a mother and father who lost a child to cancer about 10 years ago or so. During the episode, we're going to spoil the events of the game from beginning to end, and we're going to discuss topics that include, but are not limited to, cancer, death of a children, and religion. Please use your best judgment before proceeding, and enjoy. Also, since this is a minisode, there will be no mid-episode break, so I'll remind you now to please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. Enjoy!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Level 0 Literacy, where today's intro music has been switched up for the first time with a song from the world's smallest violin. I'm joined today, as always, by musical accompanist, piccolo player Mason,
Toot 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 toot,
and triangle tinger Buck. On this mini-sode, we will be talking about Kickstarter-funded and Ouya-produced game That Dragon Cancer.
How did you say that, console?
Ouya?
Ouya?
I always heard it pronounced Ouya.
That was Ouya.
Yeah.
Ouya? Whatever. It was a failure.
All the journalists pronounced it Ouya.
It was a failure. It doesn't matter at this point.
That's true. He's right about that. He got us there.
Oh, man.
TDC follows the story of a family having to continue to raise their child after being diagnosed with an incredibly rare form of childhood cancer. I did look up the statistics. I think it's there's 70 cases of this diagnosed a year. So very, very, very rare. And it has I think the survival rate was 35% after diagnosis.
Can I ask you this? Do you know the name of the type of cancer?
Yes.
Is it acute myeloid leukemia?
No.
Oh. I have a friend with a very rare form of leukemia.
Give me a second. It is called, it is specifically a type of cancer that is found in children.
Gotcha.
So it's called atypical teratoid rhabdoid tumor. It's a type of brain tumor.
Gotcha.
So, but can occur anywhere in the central nervous system. Through the many trials that their family faces, they have to try to reckon with their religion, relationships to each other, and mental health that comes with having a child having terminal cancer. TDC is an autobiographical game designed and written by husband and wife team Ryan and Amy Green, and is their way of sharing the story of what they went through. Ryan has said that he got the idea for the game during Joel's life and worked on it for around 5 years to bring it to reality. Due to funding issues, the game eventually went to Kickstarter, which allowed for more people to share their experiences with cancer to be woven into the game. Major themes for That Dragon Cancer include death, guilt, familial ties, and religion. Mostly religion, honestly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that religion is the biggest thing about this game, and religion as it relates to tragedy and medicine specifically.
Yeah. This game is a lot about the parents' sort of trials and struggles with their faith in very, very trying times. Very, probably the single most harrowing thing you could go through with regards to being a parent and your relationship to your child, right?
I thought it was interesting that the stories of the people were added as a result of the Kickstarter. I just finished this game earlier today, and I'm not really sure if it felt like it made the game stronger or weaker. I think it made it deeper, as in showing people that this is a universal experience. It's weird because I don't know.
Question. How long did y'all spend clicking on the cards during the card?
I probably
scene?
I went through all the ones that were in the room at least, and then a couple in the hallway, and then it was kind of I can't read all
I can't
of
read
these.
all of them.
I saw nearly all of them. For everyone's context, I watched a long play, which is a type of recorded experience that is concerned with recording every bit of content in the game.
Yeah, I asked that because like that was so that and y'all are gonna have to forgive me if I forget the order of things. I played this game a week ago. The part where like you can walk, you're like walking down the hallway
The
towards
pictures
something,
and
you're
the
looking at the
artwork.
pictures on
Yeah.
the artwork.
Yeah.
That was before the cards.
And both of those times really made me think about the like intense pain of sitting at the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you have done that. I have a few times in my life, sitting at the hospital with someone who's, on their way out without like a more delicate way of putting that. And it's not something I like revisiting.
Yeah.
Like it and like I found that Dragon Cancer overall like a worthwhile experience. And I also found it very interesting because there is a leader at my church who has a child who went through something vaguely similar to this. And that child is currently okay. Okay, I'm air quoting.
They're doing
listeners.
better.
Yeah, she's doing better. And this this guy who I'm talking about is one of the nicest people I have ever met. No exaggeration, no hyperbole. He is one of the kindest people I've ever met. And the whole time I was playing this game, I was thinking about how he thinks about his faith in the context of how the creators were not struggling with theirs, but I thought it really made me think about him a lot while I was playing it. And I'm like in a weird point where I don't know if I should tell him about the existence of this or not, and
Because of how it might make him feel.
Yeah,
It's weird. It's weird because it's always like, this is an experience that I know this person can deeply relate to, but it might not be an experience that they want to revisit.
Yeah.
There's like in a sense, I think this game isn't that. I think it's more meant to be a meditation for people that haven't gone through this, so they can understand what it is like through the lens of these people, obviously, and the experience is not going to be the same for everyone. This is a family who very clearly had good access to medical treatment, good insurance.
They got to just move to California when it happened.
For an experimental. So context-wise, the family moved from their home to San Francisco to undergo an experimental treatment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really explained super well in the game, but that's what happens. This, and even so, like through the lens that this is like one of the best ways this experience can go while it's still being lethal, I think is like even deeper as far as like, man, that's the best that could have gone without, remission.
And like, it's hard. The thing that I thought about the most, because, I always make the mistake of like reading Steam reviews.
Yeah.
When we play these games. And like, there was one person in the Steam reviews who was like, I don't recommend this game because I'm atheist.
Yeah.
And I think the woman, the femoid, leaning on her faith during this time is an inferior species. Like, that's not exactly what he said, but he wrote like a whole novel about being very atheist that was like just disguised misogyny for this.
Yeah. I mean, I was browsing an even worse place, Reddit.
Oh no!
Oh,
Just
geez,
looking
why?
for.
I don't think
just
Reddit
looking-
is worse than Steam reviews, to be honest.
They're at least close.
I
But I saw this post from a guy who was like, "I'm an atheist. Would you recommend playing?" I think it was Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium. Everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" I don't play games that are uncritical of religion if they have religious themes. That and then That Dragon Cancer. I was really off put by That Dragon Cancer. It's like the point, obviously the creators of this game were very devout Christians and very in touch with their religion, but you as a person not believing in a god or a higher power does not mean that you can't indulge in literature and art that does have those themes. Like, in fact, literally the opposite. It means that you should, because as a person who doesn't believe in a god, then shouldn't your whole deal be getting a better comprehension of the human experience? In
like the I don't want to focus on the Steam review too much. It just bothered me so much. Listeners, I am not an atheist, but I have spent a lot of my time being very vocal against the way the Christian church acts in popular society. And like, I think that is a lot of the draw of a lot of like popular atheism communities. Is lots of people want to be atheist because they see not want to be atheist. They are atheist, and then they find community in being atheist with each other, and then it ends up just being like the same kind of hate towards a different kind of people. And it gets a little bit obnoxious to me when it's like, you can be atheist and not be obnoxious with it, just like a person can be religious and not be obnoxious with it, right? And when I see stuff like that, the obnoxiousness of it just kind of...
I don't think this game is like very obnoxious. Well, we all grew up in the South, so our view, I think, is a little diluted of what obnoxious religion can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel like this game's views of Christianity were too over the top. In fact, I think they're like very much in line with like what
you'd expect, right?
For what you'd expect from an American devout Christian.
I think the attitudes that you two have seen speak to a sort of fundamental incuriosity about your fellow man.
Mm-hmm.
And this game probably doesn't mesh well with those people because it is such a vulnerable and human thing. This game is not ideological. This game is not heady. It is at its core a human, a personal, a vulnerable thing.
I mean, it's a family drama and like in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
Not in like a pedantic sense, but in like this is a
genre.
family going through a traumatic experience.
Yeah, imagine so you have multiple children already, and then you have a new child, and when that child is like, it's like 1.5, right?
I believe in the real world, I don't know how much of the game's events are dramatized, but in the real world, child was diagnosed at like 9 or 10 months and lived to 4 or 5,
almost 5.
Gotcha.
Now, the part where they get in the cart and there's a little racetrack around, that was
happened.
real.
That happened.
They actually did that.
Yeah.
They had to collect all the drugs for the cancer treatment, or they didn't get
that
it.
was the
They didn't
experimental
get them.
part of the treatment.
Yeah.
That was the experimental treatment.
So, since we're talking about religion, anyways, there's always this. I don't remember if it's like from a piece of media or a debate or whatever, but there's something that I always really latched onto as far as religion as it relates to medicine, where I remember like hearing something where it's like, aren't the prayers levied to God? Couldn't his response easily be just putting the people on his earth that develop modern medicine the way it is? I always like think about those things when I play or consume media like this, where it's like I have to. You think about the other side of the coin, where it's like all homeopathic treatment and no drugs, or everything's gonna be herd immunity and exposure therapy and crap like that. And it's like, I don't know. It's weird because like my personal experience with religion is very weird and not like typical in any American sense. So I've always kind of bought into that idea that, divine power would put, if the concept is we need miracles, then miracles have to sometimes be delivered through man, and that's how we end up with medical development. So I don't know. It was interesting to see I really liked how the scenes that were the Temple of Man were like always these kind of hybrids of the church and hospitals. I don't know. That really resonated with me in an interesting way that I appreciated. Like especially the next to last scene where it's inside of a church and you're on the organ.
I was so like confused and overstimulated during that.
It's a lot.
It was a lot to like process, and I'm not sure I fully understood it to be honest.
My read on that scene was that this was like the period in time. I think all of the scenes in this game are symbolic of periods of time and not like specific instances of things. This is the period of time where Joel has like finally taken that last downturn, and they know that things are coming to an end. Whatever treatment he was receiving to give him the higher quality of life has kind of run its course. And this is like the family's last desperate attempts in both medicine and with religion to try to plead for more time.
And it was also kind of like the funeral scene too.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a different read on that scene specifically. I thought the different scenes in the game they were like loosely chronological.
Yeah.
To me, they sort of communicated like...
Well, sorry. The duck scene is clearly like in medias res.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like, very loosely chronological, but the different scenes to me sort of communicated different feelings that sort of come and go during the process. That one to me read a lot like their family's own sort of lamentations, to tie it to a sort of biblical thing. It takes place in a church. I don't think that is a crazy out of left field conclusion to draw. For listeners who are not religious or haven't read the Bible, Lamentations is a book in the Bible of people lamenting, mostly like angry with God, pleading, or upset with God in some way or another. And the church scene, like, when you hit the one key and she's like, I will not let go of you until you heal him. There's like, for the first time, at least from Amy, I felt like an anger and a sense of injustice and indignity.
Because she was very hopeful throughout the whole process. When like you read, were those like actual journals that she kept?
I have to imagine they were, because she was the writer for the game and she was the mom of Joel. So even if they weren't journal entries that she wrote at the time, they were journal entries she literally wrote in retrospect, right?
Or like a loose recreation of something she actually said or wrote. But yeah, I think, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, that came after the dialogue she has where she says to the husband, I know that you know this too. I know that you know he'll get better. And the husband says, I don't know it. I just hope it. Yeah. Right. And to that is like him revealing that his faith is wavering or at least his confidence. Not really, to say I hope for it is to be faithful, but his confidence in that is wavering, and then afterwards hers does too. And then we have the church scene, and she's like, God, please, I will not let go of you until you heal my child, right? So she, like, upon learning that her husband is not confident like her, allows herself to have doubts and to lament. It's like so hugely meaningful.
There were some really, really cool artistic pieces to this.
I really liked, I did really like the go-kart thing where the timer is years and months and days.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And then the little arcade game with the dragon.
Yeah, the arcade game was cool. And like, those I love the like conversations they're having. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really interesting to like listen to like these conversations with the other children, especially like during the arcade game and like in the duck scene when he throws like the whole thing of bread in.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
And and also the scene, this is non sequitur, I'm sorry, but I wanted to bring this up when I mentioned the artistic scenes. The scenes with the farmer
where they
scene,
that's the scene where they tell him he's not going to make it.
And you can go back and forth between each of the people and go forward in time for that step. Oh man, that scene was one of the I'm going to use a shitty word here. It was one of the coolest things I had ever like experienced. And I mean cool in like the loosest term because it's a really fucking depressing scene.
No, hold on. I think it can be cool. I think because something just like I don't mean this in a shitty way, but like it revealed something, it communicated something to you, right, in a way that you had not thought of before. That was very effectual.
It was well realized.
That can be spectacular. That can be cool. You can love that.
Yeah.
You can love something. You can love a piece of art that makes you sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to say like, oh, I think it's uncool.
You're not trying to say that you're
not cheering on cancer.
Yeah. You don't think it's cool and that you don't love that these people went through this horrendous experience. No,
we're talking about the art here.
Yeah.
That shit can be cool.
Yeah. But that was such a. I didn't have the patience to go through every single person's every single thing, but like I got exactly what I wanted out of it, and it was just so. Oh man, that and like I also appreciated that they spent time showing like the, I guess not like the fact that they weren't all the husband and the wife weren't always like seeing eye to eye through things.
The boat and the drowning scene was very, very well done. The most impactful piece of dialogue in this game for me was from the pull and speak scene where you go into the mom's head and she's like, I don't want a replacement baby. I didn't think this was going to be a replacement baby. If Joel dies, I won't love this baby. And I really wish that got to be explored more later in the game, because I think that was one of the most devastating things in this game. Being from a very devastating game, that to me, that line of dialogue was so much more in a way than all of the actual dialogue between the people, that I really wish it could have been explored more. But if I were to knock this game for anything, I do feel like there are a lot of times, and I think this is intentional, but I do feel like that it doesn't get a lot of time to breathe. And I get that it's like, this isn't meant to be an experience where you get that, but I'm not saying that the player should get time away from all of the horrors of this experience, but more just like this to me was meant to be a meditative experience in grief and loss and the contemplation of religion as it relates to your children dying and medicine. And with that, I wish there was just more time to think about things over the process of the game rather than just after it was over.
Yeah.
So like if I go and I can directly correlate this to Before Your Eyes, a game that is very similar in a lot of ways, but without the religious overtones.
It had like the same-ish tumor thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of moments in that game and I know you guys didn't have the same experience as me, but there's a lot of scenes in that game where it's just you getting to kind of meditate on all the heavier things that have happened with just kind of these interspersed lighter experiences. And it's not really until you do that last segment of the game where you're kind of trapped in the bed that you are really locked in. And I wish that the pacing here had some of that break to let the player actually let the things sink in a bit,
I kind of like that you don't ever get a break from it. Because, two things I noticed while playing this game is there's this constant cycle for probably 75% of the game of building these like happy, heartwarming moments and then immediately deflating them with a gut punch, right? So it's like, you're kind of being performatively happy for the child who's got it way worse than you. And then the other thing is like, I think it's good or not good. I think it's very meaningful that you don't get a moment to sort of step away from the gravity of things, because that brings you closer into the headspace of the parents, right? Because they never got a moment to step away from things, right?
Yeah.
That's like kind of the messaging is like, it is there's a constance.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to say. Is like, I understand that that's the intent. I definitely,
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think it doesn't work. It definitely works the way they did it, but I'm just trying to speak more on like my personal experience as far as like what would have made it. And then like, obviously it's like kind of, I don't want to make it about me, but like,
what would have made it better for you?
What made it, with pieces like this, with artworks like this, there is a level of making it more, and I don't think palatable is the right word, because I don't think that art like this is supposed to be palatable. It's supposed to hurt and sting, but digestible in a way that lets you understand it on a level past the grief, because the grief, if your only takeaway from this game is like just the grief and sadness on a very surface level, I think that is doing a disservice to what the game is as a piece of art. And you really need to like dig into these like religious overtones and undertones and the concepts of like the medical system as it relates to children, especially, and all these other things. Like the scenes where, Amy is talking about the release day or whatever. I think it's like that.
Oh, yeah.
That to me was a very impactful scene, but when you finish the game, that's not what you're going to be thinking about because of all the other events. If that makes sense. Giving your players time to like digest smaller moments like that and how they matter in the overall narrative is going to give them a fuller picture of the experience.
Yeah, because you're right. Because like that's a very impactful like point of like mourning for her, and you kind of just like that's like the last thing that happens in whatever scene it's in, right? And then you just move on. Or I'm trying to remember. Or was that in the No, it wasn't in.
It was very early. It was during the hospital scenes. I think it was like pretty. It was either pretty. It was like right before or right after the racing scene.
Yeah, it was there. I'm curious. Do we know So, like, were those home recording audios that sounded like home recordings, were those authentic or recreated?
They were recreated. So the game began development when Joel was around 4 years old. So it's possible that some could be authentic, but it's probably some amount of a mixture. But I would say it's likely that more of them are re-recordings later down than actual home recordings.
I'm just thinking about, like, I'm doing this again, kind of like how I did Before Your Eyes. We're like thinking about like being a parent that has to go through this, because this has to be one of the worst things that can happen, right? Like, it's.
I mean, like, people talk about how one of the worst experiences anyone can go through is a parent having to lose a child, right? Because that's not the normal.
That's not the natural order of things.
You're supposed to die before your kid does.
And it's not just losing your child either, though,
it's
right?
the process.
It's the process
of knowing you're going to lose them.
And it happening to a kid, you know?
And while you have other children too, right? That you have to take care of.
It's
like,
there's layers to how grievous it is. I think one of the most touching and also tragic things to me is hearing the example I'm thinking of is when you're playing the Dragon Cancer arcade game. The parents in the process of telling the story show a sort of very high-minded, logical, and like compassionate and aware like tidbit, a little moment where one of the children is like, there was this other guy we knew at church. He had cancer and died. Did God abandon him? And then the parents say, well, he had been fighting a long time. And maybe for him, God let him not have to fight anymore. Maybe for him, not having to fight was the best way it could have gone. And then throughout the entire rest of the game, they cannot give themselves the same grace. They cannot allow themselves or their child the same possibility. That's like, no, our child has to live. There can be, I know his suffering is so bad and his quality of life is so terrible, but like they never even revisit that idea. They can't even consider that maybe for the child, sort of, going home to be with God is the merciful and the sort of right ending, right?
And I think right after that is with the scene where you're playing like as the dad in the hospital room and he's just crying and crying.
Yeah.
And the arcade
doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
that was like such a touching thing. I feel like I've said the word like human to describe this game a lot, but like it really is true. Like this game very uniquely captures something about the human experience that I've never seen in a game before, and that I felt like a very real connection between myself and the creators of the game, because it's true, when you're going through hard times, you don't ever allow yourself, I'm tearing up, sorry. When you're going through like a terrible time, you don't ever allow yourself the grace to be like, maybe the good ending is the one
that's the hardest.
That's the hardest, Yeah. Maybe the thing that is the best is like not what I want. Maybe I don't want the best, You never allow yourself that. That's crazy. You always want to fight it out. You always want to expect of yourself that the thing that you want will be the outcome, right? But like when you see others, you can remove sort of the emotional attachment, and you can say like, yeah, that guy dying was like, I mean, it's terrible to say, but it's the best thing that could have happened. Sorry, fuck, I'm crying really hard right now. It's like the best thing that could have happened. I've thought similar ways about hard things that have happened in my life.
Like when, my grandfather, who was, my dad has always been in my life, but I was much closer with my grandfather. And like when my grandfather fought cancer, beat cancer, and then it came back in his bones. And, like, it was so bad. He went from being, like, relatively perfectly healthy to just a nosedive so fast. And, he couldn't fight anymore. It wasn't really in him. And, like, so we went, like, it was a better thing that he kind of went quickly, because he just lost everything that was him in fighting cancer, right? Like, it...
I mean, my mom had breast cancer. She was diagnosed while I was in high school. It was either 8th grade or freshman year. And we were obviously very fortunate that we caught it early enough that she was able to just basically just get surgery and have it removed. So, it's cancer. It's just, I feel like there is no more unifying disease than cancer for people, because it is the one thing that we just can't seem to get a grasp on. So there is something so much more unifying about a disease that can afflict anyone, and our options are so limited in combating it, especially if it's not detected early. So it's interesting thinking about diseases as these very human things, but it's weird to think about how, there are very few things. I'm going to say something that's going to sound very strange. There are very few things that are human about having the flu.
Yeah.
But there's something very humanizing about having, cancer, or, 20 years ago having HIV AIDS, or, these much more long generational diseases.
Well, I mean, you know what it is, right? It's the threat of death, right? That is the quintessential human element of it.
I think that's definitely a part of it. But I mean, it's not just death. It's also, because I think there's some that a quick death is less humanizing than a long one, in a sense. Not in like a, I'm trying to think of how
I'm kind of following you.
Yeah. It's something about the long experience of people getting time to come together and reckon with the things.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me put it this way. My grandmother passed away fairly recently in the grand scheme of things, but it was never formally diagnosed, but she had dementia or Alzheimer's or something mentally debilitating that she was going downhill, and she went downhill very fast towards the end of her life. But, my family had all this time to sort of see it and understand it and experience it together, where the grief was drawn out over a longer period of time, so that when she did pass away, the grief was not as heavy. So we experienced something human over a period of years rather than a week. Or, when it's a sudden death, everyone comes together, and there is a period of great grief and great humanness. But I think there is a level of, but the recovery period is always going to be dependent on any number of factors, but the recovery period is going to be similar to that of someone who died or suffered a longer experience. So there was a humanness to the quality of my family experiencing and understanding this thing together. Whereas when death is sudden, it is much more intense, but the humanness doesn't always last as long, I think is what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah, I think I'm following you. I at least get the vibe, I think.
No, I understand for sure.
But that's the interesting thing to me about these diseases, is because it's not just about the looming fear of death. It is about the experience of understanding and the things that surround that. But yeah, I thought this game was it's not, and I hesitate to call it a game. It is a game in that a man bought Unity and built assets, and it is an interactive experience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always thought this game was about the dad. I'd never really looked into this
so
game.
So much worse.
This was all over. This is a big YouTube thing back when it came out in 2016. This is a thing
that sucks.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It was
that
weird.
sucks so bad.
And
Wait,
it's one of-
suck.
It's one of those things
fucking
where
imagining Markiplier like soy facing in the corner to this shit. That's so.
Why'd you have to pick Markiplier?
I don't
He's
know.
like
He's
the
nice.
least offensive.
Sorry, he's nice. Fucking, I don't mean to
PewDiePie.
belittle him, but just fuck, man, that sucks.
yeah. Well, this was
With the
this was such a weird period of YouTube Let's
Yeah.
Plays where it was That Dragon Cancer and To the Moon, which is also a very sad game, and Off, which is a game we'll be playing next season. So games with very deep, enriching experiences being played by YouTube commentary people, which was, I don't know, it was jarring. People that got their start off of Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and Minecraft and shit.
I honestly think people should purchase and play this game. I really like you said, it's not really a game, and it's not really a game in that it's not you don't get a high score or whatever.
You don't win points.
You can't even kill the dragon.
Yeah, you can't even kill the dragon. But I would recommend this to pretty much anyone except for
people that have already gone through it.
Maybe the church leader guy who
devout atheists who can't engage with art that's not critical of religion.
All right. Well, this has been.
Hold on. Moments, please.
I've already said my moment.
No, I think this whole game is just it's so hard to pin one moment because this whole game is just
there's a lot of
an experience. If I were to pin one moment, it would be going in the mom's head and her being like, I can't love my next child if this child dies because I don't want to think of them as a replacement.
I will nominate the dad's head in that scene where he was thinking he had some very interesting thoughts. So the dad's head in that scene.
My moment is the monologue the dad has while he's alone, where he says, "My fear is of insignificance." And then the final line of it is the thing that made me cry the hardest in the game, which was, who am I to ask God to turn his hand and make things better for me? Something to that effect. Jesus.
That's a good line.
That whole scene was the whole game was super difficult for me to watch. I played board games with you afterwards, and I was sobbing, and our other friend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm good." I can't explain it. This whole thing. I'd like to extend. I don't think the people who will ever listen to this, but just in case they do, I just want to extend such a sincere thank you for opening up this very painful and vulnerable part of your life for everyone else, in every shithead in the world like us three, to be able to maybe grasp a little better what this was like. This was so meaningful and such a beautiful thing.
All right, well, this is Level 0 Literacy signing off. We will see you all in 2 weeks. We'll talk about Celeste, something a little lighter. So we will catch you all on the mountaintop.
Fuck cancer.